I don't know why it's this hard, guys. I mean, like, 4th time in a, certainly on the 5th try, we've got to be able to get this right. Guys, I'm literally not even kidding you when I say this, what I'm about to say to you. This is the 5th try. I think 5th or 4th, I'm losing count. I think this is the 5th try that I have tried to make the 2nd episode in the Road to the Perfect Camera series. And here it's, the problem is that every time I try to make this 2nd episode, which is me trying to go into more detail on how to do this right, it gets more and more boring because I'm trying to give you more information, but it's not helpful. If you're not interested, what's the point? First, I was doing image quality, and then that was just ridiculously boring. I put myself to sleep trying to edit it, and then I was like, okay, I literally can't do image quality ever again, and then I went and was like, oh, let's talk about ergonomics, and I did the exact same thing. It was literally so boring that about halfway through the edit, I was just like, we're not doing this. I can't give this to them. This is trash. And so here we are, back at it again. This time I think I've got a good game plan. Today we're talking all about ergonomics. The idea is that from the beginning of turning the camera on and trying to get a shot, what are things that I like about each camera and things that I don't like? Talk about the pain points, the good points, the bad points, all of the things that make from start to finish one of these cameras more efficient than the other. And that goes all the way from shooting with it, what kind of storage are we using to store the files, and then what is the editing workflow like in post. So without further ado, let's keep this rolling and let's jump into our first camera that we're gonna talk about, the newest camera to the Jake Felzine film family, and that is the A7III. Let's do it. Ergonomics is quite literally defined as the study of people's efficiency in their workplace environment. Well, today, it's all about efficiency. Which camera do I want to go back to over and over again to get the shot? Now, today's theme is all about speed. From start to finish, which camera is the easiest and fastest to work with? Now, right out of the gates, the A7 III checks a box by having the on-off switch right on the shutter button, which of course means that from start to finish, as soon as you have this camera in your hand, on the right hand, you can both turn on the camera and start shooting without needing your left hand for anything. It's just more efficient. And on top of that, this is the smallest camera body of the bunch. Pair it with a nice zoom lens, and this is a perfect travel camera with a full frame sensor. Now guys, I gotta say, if I had to rank the Sony, I think I would put it at a close 2nd place in the overall ergonomics category. For the most part, this camera checks just about every box for me. That being said, there was some upfront investment. Guys, I do have to say, even though the initial investment on figuring out the menu system and just getting everything dialed, once you figure it out, it's all there. You've got all these custom buttons, 2 different ways to save your memory, so you can have slow motion on just a flip dial. That's fantastic. Zebras are here so you don't overexpose. You've got focus peaking if you're doing manual focus, which can be a custom button like I have right there. Switching to photo mode is never easier. Got my ISO set to my dial, which I really love for speed and performance. The joystick is great. Once you get through that upfront cost and you get used to using this camera, there's really not a lot to complain about here. Once you dial in that workflow, it's a great camera, has great autofocus, and really the only thing that I think that it is missing in 2020 for the kind of niche that it fits, which is the perfect small form factor run and gun camera, is that rotating flip LCD screen, which of course the Panasonic has. Just time and time again, that flip screen is so nice to have. So we've been talking about the Sony, but we've been filming on the GH5S. Let's put this baby under fire and see how it holds up on the ergonomic standings, where it sits in the ergonomic standings, maybe is what I was trying to say. Of the 3 cameras, this is the one I've had the longest, although we parted for a bit along the way. It's been a long and storied history. Guys, we're talking about the GH5S. Bam! This is the first place winner, hands down, for the ergonomics category. Now again, there was a few points with the A7 III. If you think those ergonomic points are more important, such as autofocus and full frame goodness all the time with no adapters. That's your clear-cut winner. But in my opinion, across the board, the GH5S has way more tools for filmmakers. It's got that flip screen, which is invaluable. Histogram, vector scope, log profile, this camera has it all. When you start to get out of the foofy land of subjectivity with the A7 III, that's where this baby steps right in line and crushes it on the objective front. We got our little camera assistant here. He's licking my hands. How you doing, bud? How you doing? Alrighty, guys, after we've turned this bad boy on, there is just not a lot left to be desired with this camera from an ergonomic standpoint. Tons of function buttons. The wheel is completely customizable. Again, I've got my ISO on that. Just listen to that clicky goodness. It's absolutely fantastic. We have a dedicated white balance button right here in front, which I love. Dedicated ISO button in case you don't want to set that custom ISO option. The mode dial on top is absolutely fantastic with 3 different custom settings, and for this camera, that's a total win because we've got all the kinds of different frame rates, all the way from 4K 60 up to 1080p at 240 frames. With those custom modes, I can be shooting cinema 4K movie style, and then suddenly a bird flies by, throw that baby into 240 frames, and I'm watching the feathers flap in the wind. Over here on the left is another dial just to help you with your overall photography needs. Again, just like the Sony, this camera can take pictures, another ergonomic plus. Guys, I gotta say, if the 2 main cameras you're really considering here is the A7 III or the GH5S, I think from an ergonomic standpoint, what it really boils down to is a few main points. The A7 III doesn't have that flip screen, but it has phenomenal autofocus. In my mind, it's just kind of which do you prefer? Would you rather have better autofocus? Would you rather have that flip screen? The Sony has that full frame look with native glass. The GH5S does not. That could be something that you heavily weigh into your consideration. Otherwise, both their menus are fine. Panasonic wins there. But again, like I said, both are totally fine. You'll get what you need when you need it. The final piece that I think it really boils down to is what are you doing in post? Heavy post-production, heavy grading, looking to do some pretty legit short film work versus maybe just travel films, run and gun type stuff. You're probably going to want to go with the GH5S. As far as post goes, the workflow is much cleaner. But again, for only being 8-bit, I've been completely blown away with the image quality I am getting out of this camera.
Like a dark horse, it rises.
Now guys, you might be wondering, and it's been probably a little bit obvious, there is one camera I have not even mentioned yet in this trio of cameras, and that's the Blackmagic Pocket 4K. And that's because, frankly, it is in last place in this category by a long shot. Don't worry, Pocket 4K, your time to shine will come. I still have a soft spot for you in my heart. It's there. It's just not there when it comes to ergonomics. Over and over and over again, I keep trying to pick up that camera, and frankly, for just my workflow and what I like to shoot, it just seems to get in the way. So this is the current state of my Pocket 4K. As you can see, there's all kinds of crap hanging off of it. And that's because really out of the box, this camera has some serious drawbacks. When it comes to ergonomics, this camera really lacks in 2 main areas for me, which is funny because otherwise, it's almost the perfect camera. First and foremost, the battery life. It's powered by itty bitty little baby Canon LPE6 batteries. And if you're gonna be shooting 4K RAW, that just is not enough, guys. You're getting maybe 20 minutes of runtime on these LPE6 batteries, or maybe record time. I don't know, it sucks. And there's a reason we haven't talked about battery life with the Sony and with the GH5S. It's because they're fantastic. You can have a few batteries, 3, 4 batteries, and you can go all day, no problem. So battery life is huge, which means I have to come up with some sort of big battery to stick onto the Pocket 4K, which I hate. And then the second big one is, although the screen is the most beautiful screen I have ever seen on a camera, big, bright, touch screen, it's the best screen ever, it doesn't move. It doesn't even tilt up or down like the Sony, so you don't even get the advantage of being able to see from your low shots, see from your high shots. Like, you can't even do that with the Pocket 4K. Therefore, you need a monitor, especially if you want to film yourself. You need a monitor, and if you want to film anything but directly behind the camera, aka the worst angle, you're gonna need a monitor. Those two reasons alone are reason enough to give this camera an F when it comes to ergonomics. Now guys, I'm gonna butt in here with a little bit of a caveat. If you are really looking for a budget cinema camera, look no further. When comparing this camera to its bigger and more expensive counterparts, the ergonomics are actually quite nice, even when you add things like a battery and a monitor. The menu system is the best menu system I have ever used, and the form factor actually far and exceeds most of the competition in this cinema space, and it's $1,200. So make no mistake, if you are looking for a cinema camera with a cinema camera workflow, this camera is fantastic. But if you are looking for a mirrorless DSLR type workflow, this camera is not in that league. Okay, so we've talked about the use of each of these cameras out in the field, things that I love, things that I'm not loving, the points you might pick one over the other. Let's touch on storage and editing real quick. Now, for the Sony and the Panasonic, it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Both of them have dual card slots. You're filming to SD card, a workflow that we're probably all pretty familiar with, and it's tried and true. It's standard. SD cards are great. You can get good, reliable SD cards. No problems there. On the flip side, you got the Pocket 4K, which can film SD cards. It does take CFast cards, but the best solution I have found, guys, is to strap a Samsung T5 SSD on top. It's a great way to go because you're filming such massive files. You're gonna be able to fit everything onto that SSD, and the write speed is going to be fast enough to film for as long as you need to film, which transitions us into editing. The Pocket 4K actually takes the cake when it comes to editing, and here's what I love about it. Because I've been using DaVinci Resolve for the most part right now, guys, when it comes to that camera, ProRes or Blackmagic RAW, film straight to that SSD. You just take the SSD off of the camera, you plug it straight into the computer, and you can edit those files straight from the SSD. You don't even have to back them up, you don't even have to change anything. You just drop those files into your DaVinci Resolve project, and you're gonna get just as good a playback as you would on your hard drive. And I guess I need to clarify, I am editing on a 2018 MacBook Pro, which can take USB-C type connection. So keep that in mind. As far as the other two cameras go, the workflow is pretty similar. The nice thing about the Panasonic, guys, is you have so many different options for codecs. 8-bit, 10-bit, 400 megabits per second. With the GH5S, you're going to get the perfect range of YouTube 8-bit quality all the way up to short film, short documentary type quality, where you can film cinema 4K at 24 frames per second with 400 megabits per second. For those of you who don't know, that's pretty kick-ass for the size of that camera, even by 2020 standards. Take a deep breath, guys. We're done. Lots of information, and really, I probably could have gone longer. This was the fastest way I could get all of this out, and I hope it was informative. I hope you got a lot out of it. If you guys like this video, for sure, make sure to leave it a like. This one took a lot of work, as I indicated with the intro, but it was a fun one to make, and I very much enjoy this series because I love all three of these cameras, and I'm looking forward to kind of having to push myself to raise the question at the end of this series, could I pick one camera? If I had to say goodbye to all the rest, could I pick one for my workflow? What would be the perfect camera for me? The next episode will be image quality, so stay tuned for that. I've got something fun cooking up for that. Subscribe to make sure that you get to watch it. And I will say, because I'm just shotgunning so much information in these episodes, if there's anything that I missed or anything that you're wondering about, comment down below. I try to respond to all comments, and depending on how many we get, I will consider doing kind of a follow-up episode at the end, addressing questions that you guys have that I missed. Again, I'm trying to cover as much as I can, but it's just a lot. It is a lot. It is a lot. It is a lot. But that's it. Peace out. You guys have a good one. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to seeing you in more content from Jake Felzine channel. Don't forget, as always, that creativity comes from constraint. All of that crap at the end of the video. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.